Welcome to another edition of Voice of the Diaspora. In studio today with me is political scientist and executive director of the Office of the Leader of the Opposition, none other than Mr. Aubrey Norton. Mr. Aubrey Norton will be joining us to talk about the woes Guyana is facing under this new PPP civic government. So much has been happening, and as an astute political scientist, as someone who has been around for so very long, who was functioned in different levels of his party and in politics, Aubrey has a wealth of knowledge, and he will be talking to us today about what is happening in Guyana. Aubrey Norton, welcome to Voice of the Diaspora.
Good evening, and thanks for having me, and a good evening to you and your viewing.
I wanted to delve right into the program. We know that the budget presentation was last Friday. Apparently, there were nothing in place, no official plans for public servants. And when this was raised by the opposition, we understand that Vice President Mr. Bharat Jagdeo would have said 10 billion has been put aside for wages and salaries for the public servers. I would like you to take us through what has happened out there and let our viewers know. We've got a lot of young viewers and across the diaspora and at home, and they want that simple language to understand what this budget is all about and what has transpired with the plans for public servants in this 2021 budget.
First of all, one has to understand that there's a tradition with budget presentation. When you're going to give a wage and salary increase, you state the percentage presentation. And so the entire society knows full well what is the intended increase. So that historically, while the PPP gave 5% and less, you knew on budget day, while the APNU increased it by 70% over the 5 years we were there, people knew from the present presentation. On this occasion, and in 2020, when they came in and they had the first budget, they did not declare any wages and salary increases for public servants. And so, when this budget came out, it was pointed out that again, the People's Progressive Party seems to see no value in public servants and then didn't allocate any money for them. Subsequently, I think because of the resistance to this by the opposition leader and the office of the opposition leader and the people in Guyana, Vice President Bharat Jagdeo feel compelled to respond. He responded in a normal, dishonest way. He proceeded to say that there was money in a line item called revised wages and salary, and suggested that the money there was what will be used. It is well known by people who follow budget in Ghana and know how budgeting occurs. What happens there is that during the year, there will be promotions, etc., and money is taken from that to deal with the promotions, etc., that will occur during the year. Consequently, a small sum is left back. What Jagdeo tried to do in his normal mode of dishonesty is to suggest that the money that was stated there, I think it is 10 billion, is for public service wages and salaries. And that is because he was caught and it was disclosed that there was nothing there for public servants. He resorted, but let's assume he's going to use, by the time you finish paying increases based on promotion, etc., there is nothing there to give to public servants. And so it should be evident to all that the government paid no attention to the public servants. In fact, they do not believe that they should improve the well being of public servants. At one stage, they argued that the APNU AFC left a large wage bill. So if you look at their approach, you know their intention is not to give the public servants a good life, as the actions of the APNU AFC suggested while we were in government. The most I would say about Mr. Jagdeo's pronouncements is that they continue to be dishonest, he continues to be disingenuous, and he continues to be disrespectful to the public servants in Guyana. All and sundry will know that there is no wages and salaries increases in the 2021 budget. That is what I see on the issue.
Yes, that is Aubrey Norton, political scientist and executive director in the office of the leader of the opposition. We understand that here at Voice of the Diaspora, we understand that this is not the first time that the public servants were neglected. I understand that in 2020, no provisions were made for them. Is that accurate?
It is. And what is important is that in the 2020 budget, they had the same provision which he's claiming it will come from. In 2020, it was not used to increase servants' salary. When you finish taking out what you will need for promotions, etc., they will be left for public servants. So what he's really doing is trying to do damage control, a bad act performed by the fraudulent PPP regime. They had no intention, just like they did in 2020, when they put that line item money, their intention in 2021 is to do the same thing. Put the line item there, but at the end of the day, the public servants will get nothing. We, however, political pressure to them to ensure that they find money to pay public servants, because public servants work and they deserve money. If you look at you will see the budget is aimed at satisfying some of the people in the private sector. I wouldn't describe it as a private sector budget because it does nothing for the private sector generally. But there are some cronies in the private sector. You know, they boast about removing VAT from this and removing VAT from that. Now, both Ashni Singh and Bharat Jagdeo know full well that we do not operate in a market economy in the sense of the developed world. In move VAT from items, the items will become cheaper to the people. It doesn't happen. What happens, which they know full well, is when the VAT is removed, the businessmen, they who will benefit because they will accumulate it, they will acquire the money, but it will not be passed down to the consumer so that there wouldn't be a reduction in the cost of living. In fact, the evidence is suggesting that the cost of living is increasing in virtually every area. You are seeing increases. Meat products, beef has jumped. Pork, which was selling at like 400, has jumped to 5. Chicken has jumped. A lot of the food stuff, the prices would have jumped. So when you say you take VAT off, all you do is ensure those who are selling get a better deal, but the vast majority of the population, because it doesn't trickle down, don't get. We removed taxes on gasoline while we were in government with the expectation that it will trickle down to the consumer. Minibus drivers said then that parts increase, other things increase, and so it didn't trickle down. So it is Jumbie economics for them to come now knowing the history, having been in power for 23 years, knowing full well that when there is tax reduction, it doesn't necessarily trickle down to the people. And so, in large measure, what the PPP is doing is seeking to fool people, to misguide them. The reality is the reductions in VAT wouldn't. When you look at the increase to pensioners, when we came to power, pensioners were getting 7,500 to 20 or 25,000.
Mhm.
Now the increase they would have given to pensioners can't buy sweetie. So really, it's a budget of lies. It's a budget of deception. And under this budget, the people will get hell. But PPP, that is the reality. It is not a budget for the people. And those on the ground in Guyana feel it. While about all the things they are talking about, the cost of living is going up.
The cost of living is going up. The people feeling the pressure. Um, it's very strange that the public service needs urgent capacity building and systemic change, and it appears as if this government is trying to reverse what the APNU AFC coalition in government would have done to make the public sector what it ought to be. If you can quickly give us some of the things that the coalition government did to improve uh, 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 the lives of public servants, that would be great for our listeners because they've been asking that question.
First, public servants' salaries were increased by about 70%. If this government was serious about giving public servants a better deal, one of the things they could have done is what we did. Every year, we raised the taxes. So, public servants paid less taxes. Now, they have not raised the threshold. And so, there is no benefit to be had in the area of taxes. Apart from that, one of the things we did consistently was to train public servants, give them the opportunity to improve their operational capability. We set up Collins College, which was aimed at training young public servants and preparing them to go into the public service to be both efficient and effective. We were also servants security of tenure. Let us go back to 2015. The APNU was accused by many of its supporters of keeping PPP people who were in the system to sabotage it. President Granger at the time took the position that they were employed
I think we're getting a bit of static there. We do apologize. We're getting a bit of static from Mr. Norton's end. I think the internet is probably weak down there, and so hopefully we that is corrected. That is corrected. Um, but yes, we have in studio with us Mr. Aubrey Norton. Mr. Aubrey Norton is a political scientist, a long-standing political scientist, and he's also the
People's
executive
Progressive
director.
Party is clearly anti-Afro-Guyanese. It is clearly anti the supporters of the APNU AFC. Only yesterday, Anil Nandalal, who seems to believe that he is some bully He described himself as some chattery. I don't think he's ever seen AP and AFC supporters in the real mad mood. And he's fighting to see them there. I know he wouldn't like it. I hope they remember Lyndon. But Anil is disrespectful. He is mischievous. And he is creating the conditions for animosity and racial difference. Now, he sent letters to the owner of Savons and Cartier, asking them to give up lands that they got legally signed off by the president.
Yeah.
Now, these lands are properly leased. The person with the authority to do it is the president. The president delegated that function. And in many cases, those lands were given in keeping with the law. Yet Anil Nandalal, who is supposed to know the law, is trying a trick. The first trick they try is to ask people to give up the lands so that they can get them to give it to their cronies. And then they're suggesting they are going to court. Well, my advice to all of the people who spoke with me and all who would have got lands, you got them honestly, you got them above the board in keeping with the law. It is not like when the PPP is in power, how it happens. And so they should not give up those lands. They should fight it in court, because in any court of law, what will Anil say if while we were in government, we took away the whole Linden Suzdike Highway, which they give to us, and refused to give Linden people? But we treated those leases, we know they were wicked, they were done by wicked people, but we treated them as legal. And we expect them to treat these as legal, or else they will feel the full force of the APNU AFC. We have been very reluctant to protest outside of picketing, etc. But I have no doubt we have the capacity to mobilize people and to deal with the People's Progressive Party. But we prefer civility before animosity. But the People's Progressive Party is carrying a campaign of animosity. They're carrying a campaign of driving fear. And they are placing Afro-Guyanese who support the APNU in the main, AFC, Amerindians who support us, and other ethnic groups who support us. They are pushing us to a point where we will have to deal with their disrespect. It is clear that Anil Nandalal, Jagdeo, and Irfan Ali have an agenda against African Guyanese. Invite anybody to go in front of the Ministry of Housing and see the line they have there. I was there this morning and sat down in my vehicle and looked at the line of people there. And when you look at who they are giving lands to, in the main, they are giving it to Indo-Guyanese with some token to African Guyanese. And so at this stage is that as a political movement, a political party, our hope is for unity. Our hope is for Guyana to progress together. But the attitude of this illegitimate regime runs counter to that position, and clearly, they want a confrontation, which I don't think they can handle. We know they hope to misuse the Guyana police force, but we will strategize. We have strategized to deal with the Guyana police force. We know that 95% of the police force do not support what they're doing. In fact, when you look and see what they do, when they bring out policemen for the protests, when you protest, they bring out those policemen who had problems with the law, who they brought back into the police force, who can't challenge them because they're in the same boat like them, that of being in violation of law. They bring them with the hope that they can do what them did in Linden by murdering three Londoners while they fought for their just rights. And so it is clear that we have to be prepared to take on the People's Progressive Party. We know that they got in a lot of illegalities to get the international community, etc., to install them in power illegitimately. We know that they have a lot of bills to pay, but they shouldn't do it at the expense of innocent and honest people. And we will confront them and deal with them at the right time.
Yeah, I wanted us to get into those other issues a bit more in depth, but I wanted to ask you one more question. You know, on the public servants situation, and this question is based on what representation was made that those in our constituencies who are public servants would benefit in the budget, not only in the public sector, but across the board. How do you think that those who are not PPP supporters would benefit from the budget across the board, not only with the public servants
It
situation?
is not structured. It is not structured to benefit them. If you see where they are putting the resources, when we put resources in the Amerindian community, the indigenous peoples communities, but we put it in a way that they can develop skills, businesses, etc., so that they can become independent and live a life of dignity. What the PPP is doing is doling out money in a way that they can bribe them for votes and support. Now, if you want to help a community, you will have an organization in which you create jobs, in which you create small businesses, which we did while we were in government, and in which skill to operate in this modern world. The PPP does not go down that road. When you look at the allocation to regions, Region 4 being the largest region doesn't get the kind of resources it should get. The PPP 6 and 5 will get those resources. So it is clear to all that the aim is not to treat all Guyanese as equal. Could you imagine that Linden, which has one of the highest levels of unemployment in the country, pays more taxes than Region 6 and 5, in which there are businesses, etc. And when they remove VAT, what in essence they do is remove VAT so that their cronies can benefit. And it wouldn't trickle down to any one of the support bases. And so, in a nutshell, what they do is develop a budget that forces into the hands of PPP people while depriving the APNU AFC supporters of benefits. Look, the PPP is so ridiculous. A young lady is sharing COVID money in Rijnveld, North Rijnveld, and she refuses to give a young mother her COVID money on the grounds that this young woman filed a petition against the PPP. It's an issue we will battle with. I will take it on personally because even though this young lady would have filed this petition, she's a Guyanese. She heads a household and therefore she's entitled to it. She cannot be deprived of it because the PPP puts its people there and they're doing that. One of the demands we will make is for a lot of these resources to go through the banking system where it is possible. And for, if you look at what happened with COVID in the United States, in England,
Yeah.
it goes to people accounts. All public servants who are head of households have accounts. Why can't they send it through? But to give money to PPP people, they have a set of them. Some of them could hardly read and write. All they know is what the PPP told them. Don't give Afro-Guyanese. When they go into Afro-Guyanese community, only give the person who owns the house. Don't worry if the person rent in and sublet it. When they go to PPP areas, they just tell people, bring your ID card and you pay them. It is blatant, unapologetic discrimination. And so they have not finished distributing what they have distributed in 2020, but there is more in 2021. What is clear, it is not aimed at, it is aimed at being a slush fund for the People's Progressive Party to use. They have a lot of debts to pay. And so the budget is structured to create a number of slush funds that they can get money from, do not account for, and use it for their own narrow political gains. That is the reality on the ground.
That is the reality on the ground. We're moving on. We're moving on. Look, it is clear to many who have spoken to this program, and so many people asked for Aubrey to come on this program. You know, people were kind of feverish about wanting to hear from Mr. Aubrey Norton, but it appears as if, you know, as many have said, that the PPP seem to not know what they're doing. Could you shine a brief light on the situation in which they would have given permission, the People's Progressive Party government would have given permission for a Taiwan office to be open, and then some sort of criticism came from Beijing, you know, and they reneged on that permission that they granted. What sort of government operates like that? Could you shine some light on that situation for us, please?
Well, first of all, I do believe that part of the Americans is to recognize Taiwan. But at that time, they were out of power. And since they are not people of decency and people who live to their word is not their bond. Their word is a mechanism to keep them there. They are already there. And so having wheel and deal on this question of Taiwan, who has placed herself in the bad books of the Guyanese people or a large section of the Guyanese people, recognize that they might want to shift away. So rather than allowing the government to announce it, she announced it. I think the PPP, on the other hand, doesn't do proper foreign policy analysis. Because if they did proper foreign policy analysis, and if they did any analysis of resources allocation and its role in foreign policy, they would have known that under them and under the APNU AFC, there were many projects with China. And to just declare that you are abandoning mainland China for Taiwan would have generated problems for them. Now, they know that they have an Afro-Guyanese named Todd, who is a toddler in international relations. He proceeded to say, together with the permanent secretary, that yes, there was disagreement and that Taiwan is going to set up this office. Of course, the Chinese know their national interests. Of course, the Chinese will recall that it's the PNC in government in 1972 that recognized them and contributed to the process of them becoming a dominant actor in IR, in international relations. The Chinese will know that they have a number of projects with Guyana, and if they pull them out like now, Guyana is in deep trouble. And since there is no similar project or program in the Western world, the US, the UK, etc., then they will create a hole. And so the Chinese, understanding their power, understanding their contribution to the society, and recognizing that there's this imbalance in relationship in which there is some amount of dependency in Guyana on the completion of this project, called in the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I went to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and I assume read the Riot Act. Jagdeo, in his normal political cunningness, but not necessarily with honesty, then suggested that it wasn't a cabinet decision. Now, if a matter as important as Guyana-China relations wasn't discussed at cabinet, then it's clear incompetence. But I think what happened is that they agreed while they were in opposition and trying to get power. And when Sarah Lynch loosed the cat out the bag, the poor two in the foreign ministry, Todd and Harper, knowing that they did agree, said yes, they did. Then Jagdeo and company recognized that it's a problem for them, that China has, I think, 25% in oil here, while everybody say Exxon, I think it's Esso Guyana Inc. rather than Exxon, of which China has 25% and as a key financier. I think when they recognize that they have erred, even if the cabinet discussed it, in the nature of Bharat Jagdeo, he will continue to be a bare-faced liar. And so he lied and said it wasn't discussed and had them rescind it. Of course, while he would have dealt with the problems with China temporarily, it raises new problems with the United States of America, because he has made himself what he is, an untrustworthy person. And so I believe that will generate new problems for the People's Progressive Party. But for those of us who have come from the PNCR and now into the APNU AFC, we have always taught through our policy on China, supported China. Of course, we pursue our national interests. One of the problems that the PPP has is that during their fight for power, they pay no interest in the interests of Guyana. They focus on political power, and many of the decisions they made stand in contradiction to our national interests. Venezuela is not acting up solely because of this matter going to the World Court. Venezuela knows full well that they have made deals that they can't live by. And so you have a government that is not only incompetent, but it is now vulnerable because it has made a number of decisions at the international level that will conflict with its national interests. For instance, historically, the person who heads the IDB would normally come from Latin America and the Caribbean. They agreed to have an American and vote for them. And that contradicts with Guyana's foreign policy historically, which seeks solidarity among Latin American and Caribbean countries. So you have this problem where they made that arrangement, but now they are in trouble. There are a number of decisions that they have made while they were fighting for power that contradict with Guyana's interests. For instance, they pronounced on Venezuela internal affairs. And normally, because Guyana has this territorial controversy with Venezuela, it is not in Guyana's interest to pronounce on Venezuela internal matters. It's in American interest. But they proceeded to pronounce and provided the Maduro government with the opportunity to become hostile because of their stupidity and ineptness in international relations. And so they have placed Guyana in a precarious position where their interest is compromised, and it is very difficult for them to navigate having made the errors they would have made. This is compounded by an ineffective, incompetent foreign minister who clearly does not wield power and is probably puppet number two after Irfan to Jagdeo. And so, if you have a regime that is characterized by puppets, when they make decisions and the boss man don't agree, the god of the PPP doesn't agree, he will change them. Like, my understanding is that they wanted to change the situation with GPC, where they get 90% of the contracts in health, and the boss man didn't agree, so GPC got the contracts. So it's not only incompetence, it's a regime that cannot sit and make cabinet decisions because the power lies in one man rather than the collectivity of the cabinet. That is the situation as I see it.
Wow, wow, wow. You sound presidential. You sound presidential in your delivery, and we will have to talk a bit later what the masses are saying. The young people who have come to know Aubrey Norton. We will discuss that a bit later in the program before we close. But I would like to concur with your fundamental position in terms of the People's Progressive Party seem not to know what they're doing. As you would, as you're aware, there was an incident where a boat was a boat with dead bodies in it would have been seen in Guyana's waters, and though it was spotted, and though it was spotted twice, it just disappeared in thin air, and the Minister of Public Works, Bishop Juan Edgill, would have said that, it just lost. It was just lost out of sight. The army, the police, and the maritime administration would have been searching for it, but it seemed to have disappeared in thin air. Is this government capable or competent enough to function on a daily basis, ensuring that people feel safe and people have that sort of confidence in them to do what is right and to do what is just by the Guyanese society?
They can't. The problem with this government is that it is corrupt. The problem with this government is that it has a criminal culture. Don't let us operate like if this is new. When the PPP came to power in 1992, the United States had said clearly Guyana was not a focus in drugs. By 1996, Guyana became a focus of the United States in drugs. When the PPP came to power, they came to power in October 1992. By Easter Monday 1993, Monica Reese was thrown out of the back of a vehicle, murdered, and while the police were investigating and getting to the bottom of it and recognized the link to PPP people, they were instructed not to proceed with the case. And so that became a cold case until now. A lot of people know who was instrumental in the killing of Crummy Wing. And as the police got to the bottom of it towards the end of the 2015 tenure, the police again was instructed not to pursue it. The history of the People's Progressive Party is to protect criminals, is to protect drug lords. If a political party is financed by illegality, it is very difficult for it to counter illegality. And that is why, first time around, when they were in government, they ended up being a cabal of corrupt criminals. Fast forward to 2020, and you've seen the same patterns. I am not surprised that the boat disappeared. Not surprised at all. I am just waiting to hear what is the link with the People's Progressive Party. Because the times whenever they do these kinds of things is when somebody from them has a link to the crime. Historically, they have been very loyal in terms of protecting criminal activities perpetuated by People's Progressive Party linked persons. We can go through the history and see that. It is interesting to note as well that as they seek to penetrate African Guyanese communities, the people they are using are people who are linked to criminality and the underworld. I can say without fear of successful contradiction that some of the people they're using in Linden are linked to the criminal world. You will know better than I know that one of them is a fugitive from justice in the United States of America. And so you are seeing this link to criminality. You're seeing this link to illegality. And because they are so consuming in illegality, they will have to instruct the police who to go after and who not to go after. The police are already telling you that they're fed up going after innocent people from the AP and UAFC, while they have to turn a blind eye to the criminals that are linked to the PPP. Everybody in West Coast Babis you talk to, Indian, African, everybody will tell you they know who killed the Henry boys.
Wow.
But the police is directed to go in a direction of finding people who didn't kill the Henry boys. And so once you become enmeshed in corruption and criminality in the way the PPP has been, you cannot expect them to pursue justice and law and order. Look at what they did with the police force. The first thing they did was to start moving the people who were trained under the APNU to investigate crime and bring criminals to justice. Under the APNU AFC, there was a high incidence of solving serious crimes. Many of the people that contributed to the solving of those crimes have been removed. And so what you have there is a lot of cronies, a lot of persons who professional competence is in question. One of them was caught thieving at the university in an exam. But these are the people you put to deal with crime. You cannot choose people who are compromised because of their own questionable character and integrity to deal with crime and hope crime will be dealt with. It's like putting cat to watch milk. And so no one should worry that the crime rate will gradually go up in Guyana because the PPP has removed the investigative capacity that was given to the police. Even when a man said he wanted to kill David Granger, with all credit to David Granger and the AP and UAFC, they did not become personally involved. They allowed the police to do their job regardless of what conclusion they arrived at. Not so with the PPP. Every time you meet senior policemen, they tell you that they are directed to do these things. You have a case where the minister, Ramson, who I gather they put in charge of Linden, but I will tell the whole of Linden that his father and now he refused to let Afro-Guyanese policemen use the washroom in the yard. And if he wants, he can sue, because I can bring policemen who told me that while his father serves as AG And now you hear reports that the police who are working there cannot access
The washroom.
toilet facilities, etc. What kind of human being will deprive the people that are supposed to secure you of the basics? And so you're dealing with a regime that has no element of caring in them. They are all about accumulating wealth at the expense of the Guyanese people, for them, their friends and family. And it doesn't matter what happens with the rest of the Guyanese people. And therefore, I'm not only aware that they're incompetent, they lack the willingness to be decent. They lack the willingness to solve crime. They lack the willingness to be of integrity. That's the reality on the ground again.
That's the reality on the ground. And I want to say this: the young people are listening, and Mr. Norton, as we get a bit down in the program, I will have to ask you some hard questions because it's very, very important that when a younger generation who would not have known Mr. Norton in his active days, and he's still active now, these young people are saying that the future of Guyana over the next 5 years and onward is dependent on Mr. Norton, because they are actually saying, and this is on the Small Man Show, on social media and everywhere, they are saying that without a Norton's leadership, and I'm not saying that, the young people are saying that, and there is a kind of there's a kind of train running with that sort of energy of opinion, and they're fervently saying that many are not pleased with the way the opposition is at the moment, and they believe to confront the PPP there must be a leader that is vibrant. There must be a leader that can capture the attention of the masses at a time when the PPP is trying to hoodwink the Guyanese people, especially African Guyanese. There are African Guyanese at Linden who are saying at this moment that we should forget the past, that let us look for progress. Whoever brings progress, that is what they have to look at. And I think that it is because of a void in the party's leadership coming out and speaking the way you have spoken tonight. But we'll not, I don't want you to respond to that now, because we'll talk about two more issues, and then we'll go into that
But I,
aspect of
but
the
I
show.
want to respond to that. I want to respond to that before you go to the next issue. There are some Londoners, a
One
small amount,
second,
who are
one second,
saying
Mr.
that.
Norton. One second.
uh,
Mortimer McIntosh, as I hold my hands up. Mortimer McIntosh has just said via messenger. Oh, it's disappearing. Let me try to pull it down back. He is saying that you are the best politician in the opposition party. Why are you not the leader? Only you have that answer, and people are feeling this. Nobody wants to, and I want to say this before you go on. I'm sorry to cut you. I want to say this before you go on, because I want to make this very clear. The voice of the people is important in a democracy. If the party depends on its constituents, it depends on its constituencies. The party would not have lost an election over the 4 years they were in power, but they probably were cheated, but the PPP is in power. Many people believe that the leadership of the party must be different, and every single person seems to be calling for Aubrey Norton. What do you have to say on this issue?
well, first of all, I would say this: any political party is dependent on its base. I am well prepared to mobilize our base, because if you are a leader and you don't have a mobilized base, no matter what leadership skills you have, you wouldn't realize your objectives. So, first of all, the main task is to mobilize and organize our base, which I'm doing. I'm moving across the country doing it. The second point I want to make The young people you're talking about are really the engine for what we are talking about. I work with young people as presidential advisor on youth empowerment, and I've encouraged many of them and helped them to realize their potential. I believe there is exceptionally great potential among our young people. When it comes to the question of leadership, I do not doubt my capacity to give leadership. But what I know is what is needed is a leadership team and not just an individual. I am prepared to be instrumental in that leadership team and help to guide the AP and UAFC, particularly the PNCR aspect of it, to place us in a position where we will regain power from the People's Progressive Party. For me, this is not something that is personal. For me, this is a question of rallying our supporters against a regime that is anti our people in a vicious, vindictive, and unapologetic way. And so I see myself at this stage as playing a critical role in terms of training our young people and preparing them to ensure that we beat the PPP in whenever elections are called. Because essentially, if you look at the numbers and even you look at the fraudulent numbers that they came to power with, if you deduct all the illegal boxes, the PPP would have been beaten by more than 40,000, and they purport to have won by 15,000. So, all I would say to the young people that are calling, let us work together, prepare the base, and at the right time, we will deliver victory to our people.
And that is a very very powerful response. It's a very powerful response because the young people have said to me, and they're saying on the thread now, Mr. Norton for leader, but they have also said that you have humility. I want to make this program quite serious in our discourse, and for those who do not know, you would have been perhaps one of Guyana's first batch of political scientists. When you had become a political scientist as a young man. As a matter of fact, I want to say to the viewers that you would have come through the ranks of the party. You were actually born into the party. As a young man, you would have gone through the ranks of the YSM. You would have gone through all the training that was expected. You are an academic from a very early age, and you became a political scientist when there were about 4 or 5 political scientists in Guyana, if so much. One recalls that and this is the raging conversation now, and I want to make, because I really want you to listen to me, and in so doing, you're listening to the voice of the people who are calling for new leadership in terms in the form of Aubrey Norton. You would have represented decades ago that intellectual, that independent voice, that activist that had the capability and capacity and the wherewithal to confront the People's Progressive Party and keep them in check. One recalls when you had become General Secretary, one of the most important positions in the People's National Congress, in the democracy of the People's National Congress. Young people would have had doubts in the real politic of you, Desmond Knight, while he was in opposition, and you would have been demonstrating that leadership capacity that many are saying today in conversations with me. And please just give me a minute to. I tend to go on a bit, but please allow me to draw this scenario. Many have said to me, looking back at the history, had Aubrey come to Norton, had he not been sidelined by the leadership of the party, by the old guard of the party, by a party that was steeped in believing that the hierarchy must be hold men of experience and that young people must know their place. Young people will grow into old people and still have to know their place. Now, in the 21st century, Many young people are saying today, revising that history, that had Aubrey Norton been the leader of the opposition, if he would have won that position and was elected to that position, Guyana would have never faced 23 years of the brutality, the hegemony, the abhorrent things that were done to African Guyanese and Guyanese in general. The lawlessness would not have happened. Today, the call is being made by a generation who have listened to you on the campaign trail. In 2011, when the government was rendered a minority government, I think it's 2012 or 2011, and they have 2011,
2011.
and they have said to myself and others that Linden was mobilized through Aubrey Norton. Sharma Solomon would have found strength through Aubrey Norton. You understand? The elections would have won because of Aubrey Norton's leadership, behind the leadership of the party. We saw the government going into office and would have been out of office in 4 to 5 years. Today they're calling for the leadership of Aubrey Norton. Are you saying that you're willing, if that call is seriously made, that you would not put yourself forward or be accepted at a Congress to follow and to accept the will of the call of the constituents?
I have said to a number of party people who have been asking me to run for leadership of the party that I am disposed to running for the leadership of the party. But I've also said to them that I would like to see a united party and that we should do everything within our powers to ensure that at the end of the Congress, a leader emerges, but with the support of all in the party. It's very difficult to fight the People's Progressive Party if you are divided. And so, first and foremost, I put there is for us to work out the mechanism to have unity and leadership come from that unity process. That's the first thing I want to say. It is true that when the PPP won the seat in Linden in 2006, I had actually volunteered to go and work in Linden to win back the seat, and we did win it. But I don't take all the credit for it. I say to people, I went to Linden, I looked at who existed, and I saw a core of young people that I thought I could have worked with. And I said to the party then, look, these young people have what it takes to win. And we mobilized across Linden, we organized, we won, and we regained the seat. But always remember, young people are characterized by youthful exuberance. And because they are young, and I was there as well, sometimes they want to see everything in a day and they are radical. And unfortunately, there was leadership who could not manage the radicalism. I heard you say earlier that the PNC sideline youth. One has to be careful with a statement about that. I see a lot of my political existence as being a direct result of the opportunity Forbes Burnham gave me as a young man, including addressing the United Nations in 1985. And so I have always had an abiding trust in young people. In fact, my approach to young people, even when I became presidential advisor on youth empowerment, all the people that were employed were competent young people, some qualified, some with experience. And they did the work. I believe we should treat young people as a resource to develop and not a problem. While a lot of people make a lot of noise, but me not being in parliament, one of the things I am very grateful for about this parliament is that it has a large amount of young people who are bright and competent, and I'm well satisfied to give them the kind of guidance they need to realize their potential. One of the things we have to acknowledge is that a lot of times in an organization, there's only one top position and somebody will get it. Mr. Harmon in this case got it, and I've always had a close working relationship with him. I believe that he listens. I believe that he has interest in these young people, and I have been working with him. And I believe, though I wouldn't say we did everything correctly, I think a lot was done as it relates to the opposition holding the PPP accountable. But there are some other things that we need to do, which includes mobilizing more the base, etc. Don't forget, when you come out to government, you would have made mistakes, and you have to deal with your mistakes and move on. I think we're in the process of dealing with those mistakes, and I believe we're creating the kind of foundation that we will defeat the PPP and move them from office. I want to make it clear. I don't question my ability to lead. I have led on many occasions and I think fairly successfully, but I don't have an obsession with power. I think a lot of times there are advantages to obsession with power. Jagdeo is in power because of his obsession with power. But if you have only an obsession with power and you don't care for people and you don't see people's development as critical, then an obsession with power could be dangerous. And so my position is simple. I have served in the PNC. It is true that I have been sidelined, but I have never allowed sidelining to affect me. For me, it was always a question of working for our supporters to give them a better life.
And that
I
humility.
will do what it takes. I will do what it takes to ensure people get a better life. I believe there's some amount of humility that I exercise, but there is also a certain amount of arrogance. I am very arrogant to contempt for us, and that is why Jack Deo to me is not somebody I can accommodate. And I think arrogance is needed to deal with him. I worry when arrogance is used against ordinary people on our support base. But I have no problem with arrogance when it has to deal with people
People
who
who
are
are,
seeking
yeah.
to destroy you. It is clear to me, just looking at how Anil and them are handling it, the PPP seems to feel that African Guyanese must not own property. The PPP seems to feel that only they and their supporters must have wealth. I am arrogantly against it and will do everything to ensure that that situation changes.
You make
So I believe leadership demands some amount of firmness and flexibility. You should be humble and exercise humility with the people and their interests, but you really have got to exercise arrogance when it comes to those who seek to destroy you and your people.
you made the pores raise up on my skin, and that doesn't happen to me very often. It's a very, very serious position, and I'm happy that you are on this program, and I am happy that your humility is on display, that humbleness is on display. But we have come to a juncture, we have come to a point that has never been. Look, let me make it pellucid to you what is happening and what is being said on the ground, and let me say to you that thousands of young people have intimated to me, as they have done to a few others, that the policy that was instituted by the coalition in terms of, or the decision to have a curfew, I wouldn't say a policy, but the decision to have a curfew that would have hurt the ordinary black man, the ordinary young black man, and to some extent other young people in Guyana of the various ethnic backgrounds. That curfew would have caused them to say we're not going to vote for the coalition, but we're not going to vote for the PPP also. And they were angry with the coalition. We saw, as the young people would have reminded me, the arrogance coming from some leaders in the coalition government that made statements that had offended African Guyanese. And that includes the now opposition leader, Mr. Joseph Harmon, when he was Minister of State. Also, many people are of the opinion, I'm speaking very clearly out here, because I don't want Guyana to be in opposition for the next 23 years, right? And many people are saying on the ground now, in our constituencies, they are saying on the ground now that they can't repose confidence in Mr. Harmon because whether these opinions are not facts, but they can be seen as facts, they believe that Mr. Harmon is compromised as an opposition leader. They believe that in their own inimical way of how they see politics, it doesn't have to be right about what they're saying about Mr. Harmon, but they have made up their minds that Mr. Harmon is not the right leader for the coalition. In my investigation of looking at the party as a representation of African Guyanese primarily, and Guyana as a whole largely, in terms of making Guyana a place that is conducive for people to live, for their growth and development and safety. In my research, I have got the impression that all is not well in the People's National Congress. There are factions and there is a hogging of power, and many believe that even the present confabulation of members of parliament would cause the coalition not to win any additional votes at any other election. In fact, the young people are saying out there that it is ungrateful for the party to decide to remove in the 21st century independent voices. Independent voices like yours, like Sharma Solomon, who have committed themselves to the party, James Bond, who have committed themselves to the party, who have worked hard, but who have refused to be yes men, who have refused to say, I can't go on Norman Brown's show because the leader might be upset or whatever. There is a revolution happening, and I'm going to say this to you, and I really want you to touch on this before we close. Thousands, literally thousands of people, persons in the diaspora and at home, and we're talking also about a young demographic. You can see the thread. It's making the pores raise up on my skin. This is real politics. Many believe that this is your time, and this is not about only respecting the leadership to forge a unity to confront the People's Progressive Party. Because I'm going to say this to you, sir, and I'm going to say this to you, Mr. Norton, on this program, because this is what the program is about. I'm going to say this to you, that if your leadership is not had to confront the PPP and to challenge the PPP at another election, there is no one since the coalition was out of office that have been as outspoken as you, the way you said what you said on this program. People are saying, young people are saying, why is Mr. Harmon writing letters? They repose no confidence in him. They don't feel that fire. They don't feel that killing instinct to take the party into new victory. And I really had to make this point because I really want you to talk about it. We understand your humility, but we also understand that the people are saying that this chance must be taken with you because the coalition had restored peace, security. It was on the road. The real politic was that the leaders in government did not understand the party politics. They were not able to, in the leadership, confront Mr. Jagdeo effectively. You as an activist, you as an advisor to the president, you as someone in the party did not have the power and the capacity, you understand, to really engineer what you are capable of doing to put Mr. Jagdeo in check. If Guyana makes that mistake again, and this program is saying that voice of the diaspora, if Guyana makes the mistake again, and if the opposition makes the mistake again of not allowing the person that the people of Guyana, of the constituencies are calling to lead, we are wasting our time going to another election. I'm really sorry about my passion, but I would like you to elaborate.
Well, first of all, I would say to you, I believe that we will beat the PPP in any free and fair elections. We have to do the work and ensure that we beat them. They do not have the numbers, and that is why so many dead people voted for them in the last election. I want to turn to the leadership question. Now, I am the executive director at the Office of the Leader of the Opposition because I think Joe Harmon acknowledges that I can play a critical role. I think he acknowledges my political experience, etc. And therefore, I think he has provided the opportunity for me to work with these young members of parliament and to work with him to place the party at a position where we can win elections. I have a fairly close relationship with Joe Harmon, and some of the perceptions created are not necessarily a true reflection. But I don't want to spend time here elaborating on that. All I would say to the young people who support me, even if I become leader of the opposition, it will make no sense if I can't unite all the forces in the party. And so, to me, there is little or no use value in attacking those in the party who would have made mistakes. When you are a leader, you have to look at the party, look at the mistakes, look at the people involved, analyze their human resource capability, and ensure you utilize them to do what is needed to make the party succeed. The party has to be fueled by young people, but not by young people alone. Young people will need guidance. And so, while I am clear in my head that there are a lot of young people with the competence, there are a lot of young people with abilities, and I don't share the view that this young group in parliament can motivate people, etc. I think this young group has potential. The Ganesh Maipal, the Sherwin Holder, the Amanza Walton, Gita Chandan, I could name the whole list. In my opinion, young Herod might have made whatever mistakes, but he clearly has ability. So for me, the task is to wheel this young group, give them the kind of leadership exposure, bring in new young people, give them the exposure, and to organize training so that they can realize their potential. I always say to the young people,
Yeah, we're getting a bit of static there, a bit of bad feed, of course. Mr. Aubrey Norton, Mr. Aubrey Compton Norton, is here on Voice of the Diaspora, and we are talking politics. We're talking about the issues affecting Guyana. We're talking about the PPP and its mismanagement very early in its tenure. And we're also talking about the party in which he serves and what is best for the party, thus ensuring that there can be another victory at our next elections in Guyana. Of course, there is. I am aware this is the second time,
people
but he's back.
that
Mr. Aubrey is
even
back.
post Aubrey Norton can take the PNCR and its constituencies to higher heights. So for me, I do believe I have leadership capabilities, I have leadership capacity. But I do believe it is a mistake to believe any one person with the best of leadership skills can do it alone. Forbes Burnham was what he was. When you look around him, he had Sridat Ramphal. He had Mohammed Shahabuddin, Dr. Reed, Desmond Hoyt, Yuba Jack. When you look at the core of people that he had, they had intellectual capacity. They had the ability to do political work on the ground.
Yeah.
Some of them had grassroots links. Some of them were elitists by nature. A political party is not a homogeneous unit. A political party needs ground soldiers who mightn't even know to read and write. Of course, it is your task to make them read and write. When I was general secretary, a young man came and started working with us in Congress Place, and then I recognized he couldn't read and write. And we put a program in place for him to read and write, and now he carries stripes in the Guyana police force. So I'm saying to you, let us see this as a collective task. Let us analyze the mistakes made by ourselves and our leaders, and let us take our political movement forward, involving all who can make a contribution, while at the same time promoting young people to replace us. I am not going to have the energy I have now in 7 years. It would be stupid of me to see myself as the omega and the alpha. I have to see myself as somebody who has some skills, who had exposure, who have the interests of the people of Guyana at heart, especially our core constituencies, and for me to do the work to lay the foundation for the People's National Congress and the coalition to move forward with a core of people that can replace us and carry us forward. In all fairness to Johann, he didn't drop from the skies and become opposition leader. The dynamics, the internal dynamics of the party caused him to become opposition leader. He's not void of skills. Anybody who creates that impression, one of the things the PPP did successfully throughout the last campaign is while they were corrupt as hell, they create an impression that everybody in the leadership of the APNU AFC is corrupt and compromised. And so that message got on. I would say to you, give us the opportunity to work together, including if I become a leader of the PNC, to work with everybody, rebuild or build on what the PNCR and the coalition is at this stage, and create the basis for us to defeat the People's Progressive Party. And I want to say they can be defeated. People didn't recognize that we made inroads into indigenous communities in the last election. The only area that we did not increase our votes was in Region 6. And the reasons for that are known. So I'm saying to you, the basis for victory is there. It's a question of us organizing, giving the quality leadership which I'm prepared to do. I am well grounded in the party. I know the party's history. Anything that anybody from the PPP says to me, I can answer off the cuff of the hand, like one tell me the other day about PNC and what the PNC did, and I asked him if he knew that the PPP killed Akbar Ali. He never heard Akbar Ali's name. The point I'm making to you is that we do not have a public relations machinery. And what I think people can help us to do is to build that PR machinery. The PNC has structured, the AP and UAFC has structured with a strong PR machinery that beat the PPP hands down. That is my response to
Wonderful.
what you would have raised.
As the thread it keeps moving, the last thing that was said when you finished there, it was so coincidental that as soon as you finished, this is what came up. Bharat is afraid of Mr. Norton. I don't really want to elaborate much longer on this point, but I really want to drive it home. so that the viewers can understand. I admire your humility. I admire your humbleness. I admire the call and quest to keep the party together and to have that unity. But I want to say this, like, if there's a woman that is very attracted and in love with a man, but there's another man who shares similar qualities, perhaps even better qualities. But this man that this woman is attracted to is the man that she's attracted to. She wants no other. Even though the other man may have better qualities, may whatever, this is her choice. Do you believe that she should surrender that choice to go with someone else and be unhappy? I just want you to take 10 seconds or just a yes or no answer. Because I want to continue
All,
asking you the question.
all I would say to you, all I would say to you, I hope I have both qualities so she would want me. But having said that, I want to say to you, I want to say to you,
Mhm.
we should never believe that Bharat Jagdeo is afraid of anybody. We should never believe anybody should be afraid of him. He's another human being, and unfortunately, doesn't manifest a lot of human qualities.
Qualities, yeah.
And I do not suggest that he's afraid of me or anybody. What I do know is that he has no moral right to speak on the things he speaks. What I do know is that as a person, he's not served us in good stead. What I do know is that I have lived my life in a way that I cannot be accused of corruption and
Never,
illegalities.
never.
And so he has no swords of Damocles over my head. And I will close by saying to you,
Mhm.
even if Bharat Jagdeo goes tomorrow, you will still have to confront the ills of the PPP, because it is not just a person, it is also the culture that they develop over the years that cause them to act in a way in which they can't accommodate African Guyanese. But I will also say to you, there are people who I talk to in the PPP who are not as dominant in the PPP, who have a different view on how Afro Guyanese were chosen. When we were going into a coalition,
Mhm.
I opted to support Moses Nagamoto, not because, well, I just like Moses, but I was General Secretary of the PNC at the time when I had to know what was going on in the executive of the People's Progressive Party. And all my analysis at that time suggested that one of the persons who took a fair position and believed that there was a place for Afro Guyanese in this country was Moses Nagamutu. And so when the APNU AFC started to discuss, I made it very clear very early that I am comfortable with Moses Nagamutu because, and this is not something I've discussed with Moses, and Moses will know. In fact, it's the first time I'm saying it on a public broadcast. I've said it to a few individuals, but I'm saying that to say to you, I believe that generally the People's Progressive Party has been cultivated into an anti African, anti PNC culture. And many of those that now wield power come from that background. The disdain that Ramson shows for African Guyanese in closed door, as distinct from his attempt now to appear as if he likes the constituency. Those of us who know the inside of him, and may I say I happened to have him in class at university one time, will know that he has never been a person, and he doesn't come from a background in which he is disposed to the African Guyanese community. I can probably tell this group or the listeners that As far as I recall, his grandfather was PNC, and that in the 1997 election, it was reported or it is alleged that because they felt the grandfather will vote APNU AFC, it was, sorry, PNC at the time, it was alleged that his ID card was taken away. Guyana cannot survive with the level of discrimination that is meted out to our supporters by the People's Progressive Party. And my aggression will be targeted towards ending that and regaining political power.
On we're closing now. I see the people want you to stay a bit longer, but we're closing now. But I have to
But you might
ask.
as well close, sir.
No, no, no. You'll have a few
I can
minutes more.
promise
I know
you I'll
you're.
come again. I can promise you I'll come again.
Yeah,
Don't
but
try to take all tonight.
no, but let me just say to you, you know, I haven't had a guest on this program. All my guests have been capable. All my guests have been real guests and worthy of being on this program. But I have not had a guest on this program that I couldn't really get past in my grilling. You are indeed a political scientist. You are indeed an astute politician, and your humility and your humbleness would only actually spark a stronger movement that will ensure that the coalition knows that they are treading on thin ice if the leadership that they want or need, per se, um, is not given to them. I am very, very serious about this because I know that we would have lost grounds. I'm not saying we would have lost the elections, but we would have lost grounds by the arrogance demonstrated by the leadership of David Arthur Granger and, of course, Joseph Harmon. People were very, very upset with that leadership, and they feel today, as they have felt even while the government was in power, that Mr. Harmon is an anointed of Mr. Granger. Many people are very angry that the people some of the persons who in the party would have fought and made the party triumphant at the 2015 elections would have been sidelined because of the courage of conviction to call a spade a spade. My final question to you in closing is: will there be? It'll be a tied-in question, two questions. Will there be Congress in April? Because we're getting the impression on the ground that there seem to be no preparation for that Congress because of obvious reasons, in which I would not say here at the moment. Secondly, um, and the final question is this: how would you deal over the next year or over the next month, if there is Congress, with the majority of Guyanese in our constituency saying that we have given up? Some of us want to go to the PPP and take what they have to give. This is what people are saying on the ground now. We are fed up. We are not pleased. We were happy with Mr. Granger's president, but we weren't happy with what obtained at the end, and they felt betrayed. They felt that there wasn't real gumption and and so on in terms of keeping the PPP out of office. The call today, Mr. Norton, the call, and this is not. You can go into the thread. People can go into the thread. They can see what is being said here. They can go to every community in our constituencies and ask them what are their thoughts on this subject matter, and you would hear the rallying cry that Mr. Norton should be leading. In fact, many believe that when the call was made and it was gaining traction, that the strategy of the leader of the opposition was to bring you into his office. Um, you understand, to make people feel that you are there to ensure that things happen. But people want their leader. They want their leader. What do you have to say?
I don't think that the leader of the opposition brought me in
That's the
because
opinion of many.
no, but I can correct that opinion.
Mhm.
I don't think that the leader of the opposition brought me in because he wanted to be leader of the opposition. I can say this to you. The person who spoke to me to go back to Linden in 2011 to work with Linden, and I have always been close to since is Joe Harmon. I want to say to you that when Joe Harmon handled Region 3 in the 2015 election and work caught up with him, he called me and he said, Aubrey, I think you can do this. Throughout government, even as people battled against me, I can say without fear of successful contradiction that Joe Harmon supported me. And even while all the wild things were flying around, he did. And it's the reason when my name started to call for leader of the party, the first person I spoke with about running for leader of the party, once I think the conditions is right, is Joe Harmon. I will not, as a person, contribute to views that I know are wrong. I'm not saying that he's all right, he's some pie. I'm saying that on this issue, the perception is wrong. I want to say as well that I do not see obstacles, I see opportunities. I do not see problems, I see solving problems. And what the situation at this stage does is provide a golden opportunity for us to solve the problems and move forward. I want to point out to people that when the PPP lost in 2015, Bharat Jagdeo and Robert Prasad, it was reported or alleged that they were at war. A number of people were at war in the PPP. You know that in the PPP, they many of them didn't want Irfan Ali. Some wanted Nandlal, some wanted the health minister. But they all came together and ensure they get government. I will do everything to ensure that we get government. While I think people have the right to express their views, I believe those who support us must temper their views until they get the facts. And when they get the facts, they can take whatever position they want. Now, I believe in 1997, when I became General Secretary, the party was in a worse position than it is now because it was our first time out of power. And I remember roaming this country and helping to mobilize the party. I think I have the capacity and can do it again. And so I am not worried. I believe the PPP will target our constituency. We have to do our work. And I believe once the opportunity is provided, I will mobilize the support base of the APNU AFC and we will beat the People's Progressive Party. That is my focus. I am not known for focusing on 2,000 things at the same time. I identify the critical ones, focus on them,
Will there be
and the
Congress in
subsidiary
April?
ones. No, I cannot see whether there'll be Congress in April. The last decision made by the central exec was in April. I know they are talking about pushing it back. For me, the issue is not whether it is April or August. For me, the issue is ensuring we get the right leadership when it is called.
Thank you very much. The issue is ensuring we get the right leadership when it's called. Aubrey Compton Norton, political scientist and executive director in the office of the leader of the opposition. It has been a pleasure. It has been a honor. It has been a privilege to have you on this program. And I know I'm probably not going to sleep tonight because I'm so elated by the fact that you agree in your distinguished to have your distinguished presence here on this program. I am honored and I am privileged to have you here. Aubrey Norton, thank you for being on Voice of the Diaspora, and we hope to have you back soon.
Thanks, thanks for having me. And I don't think you should see it as a privilege when you and I know each other from Linden. It's
Nobody's
just I was there.
nobody's calling for me to be the leader of the party and the eventual president that a leader would take into next election and
Well,
win it. That is how distinguished you are.
I would just say to you that that doesn't mean you don't have the capacity.
I don't know. I am looking. I am looking in the immediate future for the leadership that will reconnect our base. But thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for
And
being here.
thanks for your words of encouragement, and thanks to your viewing audience. Have a good evening.
Aubrey Norton here on Voice of the Diaspora.